Hello, friends, and welcome to your Daily Detroit, sharing what to know and where to go in Southeast Michigan. We have made it to Friday, April 14th, 2023, and hailing from east of Woodward, I'm Jer Stays.
And from west of Woodward, I'm Devin O'Reilly, and this beautiful day.
It is. In fact, it sounds a little bit like a beautiful day behind you.
Well, I've decided to make the most out of this beautiful day and retire to the Sun Porch studio over here at O'Reilly headquarters. So we haven't got to use it yet. We spent last weekend getting the Sun Porch ready for the season, and now I'm happy to enjoy it. And it's a great place to do a podcast if you don't mind the chirping birds and occasional airplane.
So where have you been, sir?
Well, yeah, this actually sounds like where I have been. So it was more of kind of a work-related thing, but I think this is a place that's maybe a little bit like the type of place that people pass by, whether on foot or in their cars, and don't necessarily stop to smell the proverbial or literal roses there. But Elmore Gardens is just a really kind of cool kind of hidden gem. I guess you call it a hidden gem. So, you know, the Elmore now Hotel, that really cool brownstone building in Midtown, and it's got this little kind of public garden. So now it's a hotel, kind of, I guess, high-end hostel, little mini resort hotel there. And then next to it, they have this beautiful public garden that is open pretty much every day, sun up to sundown, basically. And there's benches. You can kind of sit there, get inspired, have a little break, take a little mental break, enjoy nature. And we were over there with a group I was with from work. And it was just really enjoyable to spend some time there. And then not only that, but you have the Seasons Market, which recently opened up in the last few years over there. Then it's just really lovely. That everyone was super, super friendly. You can get coffee, you can get beer and wine, and you can take it into the park. There's tables inside and outside. It's kind of like a little bodega market type of situation. So if you haven't been there, I really, really strongly suggest that you go there. And it's one of those places that I kind of just forget about. And I was in the area, stopped in and had a lovely time both in the market and in the beautiful Elmore Gardens.
Isn't that the area, if you go up the street there, that's got the water tower kind of sitting area, like the top of the water tower that's on the ground?
Yes, yeah, it's right over in that area. I mean, basically, yeah. I mean, you're on Alexandrine Street. You're really kind of in what I would consider kind of the heart of Midtown. I mean, you are literally within a stone's throw of Honest John's, Condado's, Gus's Fried Chicken, Castalia. It's right across the street now from Mad Nice. So another new place that had opened up.
There you go. There you go.
I understand maybe you were also in that area too.
I was. So I had a meeting, and it was quote unquote work related, but let's be honest, we had a good time. I went to the first kind of spring patio for me, which is the Old Miami, which I tweeted out is a dog park for humans. It is a great place. It is the reverse of some of the fancy places that you all like, that a lot of people talk about. This is a place where you order like 2-ingredient drinks, like a gin and tonic or a rum and Coke or a Jack and Coke or something like that. That's more of its vibe, right? Or a beer. And it is an amazing little corner of Midtown. And what I realized is that a number of people don't know about it. And I was stunned because I've been going for years. Heck, my dad used to go because it's a veterans bar and he was a veteran. It's originally a veterans bar. You can still see things in there that it's a veterans bar. It's got a long history in the neighborhood. So posting on social media, there were so many comments of, where is this? What is this place? I've never heard of it. And I'm sitting there going, how do you not know about the Old Miami? But it was a reminder that in the wrappings of all the newer things, right? The Elmore, which you just talked about, which is a little bit newer, or Mad Nice or whatever, we need to make sure across the region to highlight the places that are special for whatever reason that are kind of old school, because there's always going to be new people who didn't know. And I realize this now more often with the intern. He's, in his very early 20s, doesn't know these things. And so I realized that I need to talk about it. So let's talk about the Old Miami for a second and why we enjoy it for what it is. I know you enjoy the place too, Devin.
Oh God, the venerable Old Miami. I don't know if I'm disheartened or surprised to hear that that so many people have not been able to experience it before. I mean, it's just, I don't know. There's not enough superlatives. It's an institution. It's kind of like, God, when there wasn't anything there was Old Miami. And, I think it's something where it kind of leads into the conversation about kind of respecting the past a little bit. Like you said, that was a veterans bar. So like Old Miami doesn't refer to the city in Florida. It refers to MIA, Missing in Action, Michigan. So veterans, like you said, it's a veterans bar. So the mix of people in Old Miami at any given time being on, on the Cass corridor there has been just a wild experience. Everything from college students to actual veterans, to people just passing through. But yeah, I mean, kind of the two things to call out there are the interior, which is basically like your grandma's living room, essentially. I mean, all kind of like secondhand furniture, just like nothing matches, just a basement. And then you have this beautiful, huge outdoor space, basically the backyard, with its own separate bar that's open sometimes, and just all these different chairs and seating arrangements. And it's kind of like get in where you fit in, but it's just such a diverse mix. And especially as we kind of go into, new eras of Detroit, new generation, Jerry, even younger than us, it is one of those places where you really have to kind of, I would advise people to respect where you're at. Don't be a jackass at Old Miami. I mean, they'll let you know if you are.
I think this is an on-ramp to that greater conversation of, there's always been things in Detroit that have been doing good things. And maybe, this is a good starting point just because it's familiar or popular or something that kind of caught some attention, that there are places all over Detroit like that. And if you're somebody who, and when I say new, sometimes people are new just because, like, I talk to people, we have listeners that I could be their dad at this point, and which is scary, but true. And so, like, you got to give a little bit of forbearance for that, because, like, if you didn't exist when I first went to the Old Miami, or like they didn't have a dad who was a Plum Street artist or whatever, it's that understanding of know these things. And maybe it's an on-ramp to wherever you are in Detroit, whether you're in the city, whether you're in the neighborhoods, whether you're in, various communities. All these places have institutions, and to kind of respect what they are and kind of, match the vibe as opposed to trying to set the vibe, because it's been here for a long time,
100%, Jared. You have to match the vibe, and luckily those places like Old Miami will let you know if you're not matching the vibe. So again, order simple stuff. I mean, something that they can either crack open like a can or a bottle, or like you said, like a 2-ingredient drink. Keep it simple. Enjoy yourself. Respect where you're at, and know that Old Miami is a rite of passage for generations of Detroiters. So you keep that in mind, and it's a wonderful place. And we're in Old Miami season, basically, Jared. We might as well use this as the jumping off point to say, 'tis the season. It's outdoor patio weather. There is not a better outdoor space in the city than the Old Miami backyard.
Now, Devin, I was running errands yesterday, and I ran into a place I never thought, like, I've driven by it before occasionally. I am an East Sider, so I'm not as familiar, but my errands ended me up in Southland Mall, or Southland Center, of all places. And I was stunned. I'll say, number one, although it's had like whatever issues up and down, I was stunned that there were actually a bunch of people in there. Like, I posted about it, and we actually had a listener who was in the mall at the same time that I was. So that's number one that I will put out there. Number two, I went to the Best Buy there, and I saw this amazing modern skylight, and I was blown away. I'd seen it from the road. I didn't realize what it was. And I wanted to ask you, as the resident West Sider, I'm used to Eastland. I'm used to, those are my memories because that's where I was, and a little bit of Macomb Mall, like at Eastland with the Marshall Frederick sculpture, the lion and the mouse and all that stuff, but a completely different thing. And I stepped into that Best Buy and went, wow, if like this was like shined up as a retail space or whatever, like this is the kind of thing you'd see in a big city. It was a really cool experience. So I wanted to ask you, Devin, about it, because I got a feeling that maybe you spent some time there.
Yeah, I mean, hey, generation of malls here. I mean, I feel like it's really interesting to hear you talk about it like that, because I feel like we're kind of, we're in a situation where, everything that's old is new again type of thing, where these malls that were considered like outdated and beyond repair and past their time, this cool retro vibe that they all have. So I'm speaking of them like Southland. I'm thinking of Fairlane. I'm thinking of Westland. They all kind of have this like retro vibe now that's really cool. Like you mentioned, the skylight. It's a very like on brand like 70s vibe, which is actually kind of popular again now with like design. So it's really cool that this is kind of coming full circle. God, I haven't been to Southland in forever, Jared, forever. But I do remember going there. It's not too far from where I grew up. So it was a pretty short drive. They had some cool stores. I remember they had a restaurant in the Macy's. I can't imagine they still have a restaurant in the Macy's, but maybe they still do. But it was really cool. Just like I said, you got, I think about it as like the mall bingo. You got Southland, Westland, Eastland, and Northland. And I've been to them. I checked the bingo card. The first three, the three were easy. Eastland was the hardest for me to get to, of course, being a West Sider. So I didn't check Eastland off till I was much older. But yeah, it's the different the directional mall bingo.
I have not yet visited Westland. So now I've got Eastland, which now you cannot get, and you can't get Northland, because every once in a while there'd be a certain thing that my mom and I would take the bus and go to Northland, the 8 mile across, and then I would take the 31 Mac up to Eastland, from the east side of Detroit. So that would be how you connect to that. But Westland I never made it to. Southland I had never made it to until yesterday. Do you have any idea what was that thing? I mean, I know it wasn't always a Best Buy, the glass area in Southland.
Now that I'm thinking about it, I feel like it was like maybe a food court.
That makes a lot of sense.
It's a big open space. I think I remember eating in there, and like obviously that skylight is so dramatic. So I'm thinking it was maybe a food court, but I couldn't be sure.
If you've got Southland memories or any mall memories, dailydetroit@gmail.com. Are we missing out on some of these things? Are these things that could have been repurposed? I'd love to hear what your thoughts are. I mean, we've lost some of them. I know that there are some people who have a lot of wistful thoughts about it because that was their childhood. Whatever, the KB toys or...
Oh, KB Toys. Great call, Jared.
Devin, we got a lot of listener feedback lately, and one of them I'm going to pick out because I think it encapsulates some of the questions over the last few episodes that we've done. And this is from a guy named Jason, and he says, "Guys, love the show, but I have a question because I am not an economics guy. I'm a mixed media artist, and I'd like to know, after a couple episodes, and especially the one with Lou Glazer, which we had earlier this week talking about kind of a blueprint for Michigan's future to grow, why do I care about growth? Wouldn't that just make things more competitive? Why do you all keep saying or talking about the region and the city and that they need to grow?" And I think there's a few different ways we could answer this question. I think this is a great question, and I think it's a very honest question.
It's a loaded question for sure. I'll give you that, Jared. So do you want to start or should I start? I mean, I'll try to set the stage and just say that, like, from a macro standpoint, growth is important. Economic growth is important. The goal is this creates jobs. This creates economic stimulation, buying, more people spending money, more money kind of in the local economy. It does sometimes make things more expensive, and it does make things more competitive. In that kind of space, that's what we're built on, Jer. We are a capitalist country, and so frankly, that's just how we're designed to work and function. And I think it's also important because the competitiveness doesn't necessarily come from the places themselves within our region. We have to think competitively about other places that people live. And if we're not growing, if we're stagnant, or if we're going in the wrong direction, we start experiencing population loss like we're seeing. And Michigan as a state, if you love living here, you want growth, you want it to be competitive, because otherwise people will just keep leaving, and we'll get, lapped by some of these other cities that are growing.
Well, see, I'm going to take it a little bit on a different take. You put these things out of jobs or whatever. I'll make it very simple. One, from the inflation point of view, everything costs more every year. Now, when you think about all the services and everything that needs to run a place, if it costs more every year, but you have the same or fewer people paying in, it's going to cost more for all of us. That's just simple math, because there's no way, like, in the future. And obviously it's been kind of enhanced lately in the last couple of years, but every single year, everything costs more, even if you have the same amount of stuff. And then you go ahead and add more stuff, then that maintenance cost increases. Like, you don't just build a road and it's good. Right? In time, it has to be rebuilt. It has to be rethunk about. When it comes to competitiveness, I'm going to look at it from a different view, Devin, is that a growing economy allows for more opportunities for people to make more money. I think about when you're thinking about an artist or something like that, there is more people to buy your art, to support the things that you are doing. One of the reasons why so many of my creative friends have moved to other cities, and it just comes down to money. It comes down to the resources to be able to support those kinds of industries. And then I think the other thing I'd add to, and this might be a little bit controversial or an unpopular opinion, when you have growth, it is easier to do things like equity. because there are more resources and people aren't fighting over the same pie. When you're baking more pie, there's the ability, it's much easier politically and everything else to share that pie as opposed to having to shift the same pie or less pie among the same amount of people.
Jared, the first point you made, I really, really appreciated that you brought that up because I think that is important to note. Is that depending? Let's take it from let's take it from the other side of the coin, like you were talking about. You're someone who creates something, whether it be art or you sell goods. You're the person who is relying on other people to buy from you. You want growth because you're exactly right, Jared. Then that people have the resources to buy your goods, to purchase your services, to pay you, what you need or what you deserve to make. And if you're not experiencing growth, you're not going to get that. People cut budgets. You think about in economic times or things are going really well. Budgets kind of open up, and there's more money to do this, there's more money to do that. You can spend more on your design, you can spend more on your art, things like that. But when pockets get a little light and companies and people don't have money to spend, budgets have to get looked at and things get cut, and then maybe you can't spend so much money on certain goods, certain services. And so I don't want to make it, I know the rising tide lifts all boats does not necessarily work in all cases, but it kind of sums up here that at least, in the conversation we're having, a rising tide lifts most boats, at least.
I think about another thing when it comes to businesses coming into certain places. I will see all the time people drag Trader Joe's for not being in a certain neighborhood, or it needs to be in this area or that area. And there's very few Trader Joe's in Metro Detroit in general. And one of the reasons is that they know what they need in order to succeed as far as the income and the kinds of people who shop at Trader Joe's. There's very bright people there and at all kinds of businesses. And one of the reasons, not only reason, but one of the reasons why you see so many incentives, not just in Detroit, but incentives offered across the region, because if you look at various development projects, you will see incentives there of different kinds, is that it's very hard to convince a company or anyone to start something in an area where there aren't more customers to be had, where you're going to have to fight into shrinking customer bases. That changes who comes in, and it makes it so that there kind of is that stagnation that we've seen in certain places of the region and of the state. Because if you think about it, if you're going to put millions of dollars into something, there's going to be less customers, there's less possible upside. And so you need more incentives to make up for that possible upside. If you have a growth situation, or, mostly a growth situation, it is something where it makes more sense financially. You maybe don't need as much outside of, say, preparing the field, like preparing the land or something. Because a lot of the brownfield credits, as we talked about, is about fixing land that was formerly, kind of hurt to put something new on it. That is a real part of that equation. And I don't think maybe people don't want to realize, maybe people don't understand, maybe people don't see that bigger picture of it's all to make money. No business starts to not make money.
Right. God, you're gonna pull me back into this economic development incentive conversation again, Jerry. We just can't go a show without it. But it does seem to be top of mind. But yes, as you mentioned, kind of the situation we're in is we do have to offer incentives. We have to incentivize economic development and growth, because we have experienced so little of it, and frankly have been going backwards in recent years and in recent decades. This is a long time of this. So the more growth we experience, the less people have to incentivize, and so it really becomes a catch-22. Cities that are experiencing growth, and I'm not trying to pull numbers out, but you think of places like Austin or Seattle, the DC area, they're experiencing tremendous growth. They don't have to throw incentives at economic development, at people to build, at people to put new things there.
It's more about preparation and things like that.
Exactly. And so, we experience growth, then we need less incentives. So that's an oversimplification of it, but that's kind of what it is, without getting into a really deep conversation.
Right.
That's basically where we're at. We've been kind of going backwards or stagnant at best for so long that we should, I think, embrace and support economic growth.
When you look at the city, the median household income is somewhere in that $35,000 range. Like that just isn't sustainable. And the hope would be, and I think the real focus should be, how do we keep people from leaving, right? And we really focus on that equity piece of raising up people in the city to make more money, as opposed to what is frankly happening right now, which is people get some money and then they hit the suburbs. And like flight is a thing. I'm working on a bigger project. I'm not going to dive into all the numbers, but we need to really look at that part. We should be talking about that more often. And I'm not the voice to talk about it. I think I need to go ahead and find some people. I know some people that we should talk about with it, but that's a conversation that we should have, because that kind of income just isn't sustainable long term. We just end up in kind of the same circle. I think the last point I want to push on is political power, because the rest of the nation has been growing. So the political power side, I think, is very important. It matters as far as what we get, as far as the kinds of policies we want, not just like money back for projects, but think about us as a blue state. And if you're somebody who aligns with that worldview, think about that political power as a blue state and sending those people to Washington, advocating for those for those other higher ideas. We have a smaller voice at the table than we did.
Yeah, you said a lot. You said a lot, Jer. I think we have listeners who listeners and maybe perhaps fans of the show, or maybe sometimes fans of the show, who can speak to this even in more depth than we can, and cover it from kind of a better perspective than kind of you and I sitting here talking about it as a couple of elder millennial white dudes.
All right, before we go, I want to give people a reminder that I am traveling next week, so we are going to do 3 episodes instead of the normal 5. That's what I can fit in with the travel schedule. Devin, I believe we're still doing our thing, right? You're going to be here next Friday.
Oh, yeah. Mr. Friday will not miss. I'm hoping for a continued streak of good weather. I don't know. I know we dip a little bit, so maybe I won't be on my porch, but I'm going to certainly try, even though it sounds like I'm in an aviary. It's all part of the vibe, Jer. It's that season.
All right. Thank you so much for listening to Your Daily Detroit. Before you go, both Apple Podcasts and Spotify have star ratings. So if you want to drop us a Daily Detroit 5 stars, it'd be great for people to know about us that way. Thanks to Fletcher, Randy, Cheyenne, Luciano. Of course, Devin's always so good to talk to you. Plus those who have supported us, patreon.com/Daily Detroit. Local media requires local support. So with that, I'm Jer Stays.
I'm Devin O'Reilly.
Have a wonderful weekend. Remember that you are somebody, and we'll see you around Detroit.